I'm back. Oh, you're muted, Chief.
Dang. Lamb back and good morning. How are you, Chiquita?
I'm doing great. I've had so much time to be in my garden this week. This has been a really nice week. You know, praying to the ancestors outside. Lamb back, Comrade.
Lamb back, Comrade. Yes, that garden that you were showing off on Go Off Sis. Oh my God, those strawberries.
Delicious.
What we're about to have in Hammer City.
Yes, my goal is to grow cabbages that are like bigger than our heads. So I'm excited.
Yes, none of that colonizer cabbage.
No
As
plastic
people are being
cabbage.
said, right? Down with the colonizer cabbage. Like
Exactly. Down with the colonizer cabbage. Lamb back sarcophagus.
Lamb back, Hakeem. Oh my God. Make sure to like and share when you're coming in, right? Like, give us a like, show us some love.
Yes, toss a like as we're coming into the room. You know, boost it for the algorithm. Lamb
Yes.
back, Weasley. Lamb back.
Get your friends and family up, you know. Get them in this book trap. Land back, Chief Yabe. Land back, Chief Akata. Yes.
Yes, lamb back. Yeah, is the MO chapter ready? Ready? Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Yes.
Cabbages, yes.
Cabbages, exactly. Exactly. Hi, Jen. Welcome. Welcome into the room. Lamb back. Felix, lamb back, lamb back. How are you? How are you, Chief Federico?
I'm good. Week's been busy, but it's been good. You know, I'm doing well. Um, yeah, and it's like a beautiful day today, so I'm gonna try to get out, you know, a little bit before forging the hammer. That's what we have today. So I'm
Yes.
excited for.
Yes, I'm so excited for today's Forging the Hammer. We're going to be talking about individualism, which is a form of liberalism. And I'm really excited to see how we attack this contradiction because we recognize individualism and liberalism are really ingrained into colonized people because the colony wins when we are individualists, when we are liberal. So I'm ready to see how we're going to squash that and how we're going to just.
Exactly. No, I'm so excited. Forging the hammer is always so great too. Like the political education, they really steal us, you know, make us into more cadre. Land back, Chisa. Yeah, I love all these comrades coming in. Oh my God, get your kids up and shooting. Land back, Chief Ina.
Shout out to Chief Ina. You know, I'm going to shout her out every time. That's my campaign's leadership. Shout out to Chief Ina.
Yes, they really be doing it like out here.
Yes. Alrighty. As everybody's coming into the room, don't forget to hit that like, to share. But we'll be moving on into our fundraising because we need to get these funds.
Yes.
So Hammer City. Yeah, so we are fundraising for Hammer City. It is a city for people of color, colonized people, free of discrimination, based on our second principle of unity. And yeah, it's going to have free housing, free jobs, accessible jobs, free food, and free healthcare. And most importantly, in my opinion, there's going to be no cops, no rent, no coronavirus, and no colonizers. And we're returning this land to the indigenous people. And we're building our first Hammer City in what is known as Colorado. So let's get these funds coming in, because I know I want to be free like tomorrow.
Like I want to be free as of yesterday. Like, you know, and I'm so excited for Hammer City. I'm excited to have those head cabbages, you know, those strawberries, you know, everything that you were growing in that garden. 36 from a colonizer already. Chief Yabe just be showing up every week with these reparations. I don't know where you be getting these reparations from these colonizers, but we love to see it.
Literally, she's got the crown, you know, her well-deserved crown. Yes, come through, G Hammer, with $5. Yes.
Yes, and everything you donate. Yes, comrades are here. $10. I think that's comrades are here. I don't. No, that's actually Benjamin. Sorry, I read the wrong thing. But yes, yeah, and all of this, goes towards your liberation, the liberation of your people. Like this is the first Hammer City. Like I'm so excited. We saw the construction video, like of them beginning construction, and just like more pictures of the land. Yes, Chief Watakame, $5.
Ooh, $20 from Chief Ina. Thank you, Chief Ina. And from $5 to $10 to $20, we appreciate it all. Yes, Comrade Nick, $20. Thank you so much. Yes, and we want to be free, like again, as soon as possible. And to see the engineers commit class suicide to dedicate those dedicate those skills to the masses is really, really just beautiful to see. Yeah, because we're getting free. We're getting free.
Yeah, they're really out there building it. Like that was crazy to watch. Like it's so exciting, but we about to build Hammer City. It's going to be built by the end of the summer. Is kind of the hope, right? That's the goal. That we have, our first Earth bag home and everything. And like Chief already said, right? No rent, no Rona, no pigs. So like, just truly such a liberating space. Yes, Chief Nenafar, $15. Yes, Chief $10. Get those reparations if you ain't got the money this morning.
Yes.
Go find a white person at Starbucks. Tell them they owe reparations.
We need to see more reparations in the comments. We need to see more reparations in the comments. Yes, there you go. $50 in reparations. Yes. $20. There you go. There you go. Because I'm seeing too many colonized people. We're a poor and working class. Yes, we need it. We're funding our liberation, but you have our financial resources. You stole our loot. Let me see more reparations in there.
Stole our land. Yes, Chief Haney. Or Sergeant Haney. Land back and good morning. Yeah, I'm honestly so excited for Hammer City. Like as these pictures and more videos like keep coming in, like it just excites me more and more. And just like seeing the plans, like the structures that we laid out within our Tuesday rally, like the Walpini food structures, which are going to grow food for us and sustain us for thousands of years. The earth bag homes, which will literally stand for thousands of years, right? Because these are indigenous structures that have been parts of these lands for thousands of years. And we're made to exist within harmony of the land and the earth and us, right? I'm so excited for it all. Like we got it all laid out, and all these colonizers be like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. But like this is all indigenous knowledge. This is colonized brilliance, and that's what's coming together to build Hammer City. Yes, Justine, $8.
Yes, thank you, Justine. And yeah, don't forget to check out our donor box at donorbox.org/buildhammercity. If you do not have, if you don't have Cash App or Venmo, you can always donate through there. And the awesome thing about donor box is that you can leave a little comment. Like, I remember I left a comment. I was like, Hammer City is the only solution for colonized people. Punto. Like that is literally the only solution. So yeah, you could donate in our donor box as well.
Yes. No, it's such a good platform. And like, yeah, leave a comment. Let us know like why, you're donating to Hammer City, what you're excited about for Hammer City, your dreams, because like obviously this Hammer City in Colorado is not going to be the first Hammer City. You have the whole world to free, right? And this is the start. It's just so
exactly. I'm so excited about that. And also just to add on to what you were saying about the earthbag homes, like this is literally something based in indigenous science. Like the Pueblo Nation still has their structures from even from 1000, I think it's 1100 AD or however, colonizers measure time, but for a really long time, and they're still standing. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited to really start these constructions of these earthbag homes, to start our Walapini structure, and just to grow so much food that we have abundance. Abundance, abundance, abundance. Like that's all Black Hammer knows. Abundance.
Yes, and there was someone in the comments even saying they're going to donate like banana trees to us and stuff. Like we're gonna have everything at Hammer City. Like they're like what people think is impossible is going to be possible within Hammer City. Like.
Yeah, and it's not even impossible. It's for their colonizer minds that want to limit colonized brilliance. Like when we think, like we literally built empires. Every single colonized nation built empires from Turtle Island to Africa to Asia to what is known as the Middle East. Like literally empires everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And colonizers had to literally create race science to build their empire, to colonize the entire non-white world and build their empire. Like, so this is nothing new. Building empires is nothing new to us. It's literally in our blood. Like, we know how to do it. So yeah, I just think it's so beautiful.
And they weren't like empires constructed on death and destruction of the world, right? Like, like the Inca Empire and stuff was like an empire that was like dedicated to the people, like eradicating homelessness and poverty and hunger and stuff like that, right? And ways to care for the people, like, and that's what we're going to work to do, like we're not going to be like an oppressive structure. Like, this is us building a state, the vanguard, provide for all colonized people worldwide, give liberation, and live communally with each other, with the land, and restore that balance to the earth, to the cosmos.
Exactly. And like core, like Alpha A said, from the recruitment core said, white people, colonizers, make that payment to the donorbox.org/build Hammer City, select monthly reoccurring payments. Punto. Tell these colonizers, like every single month, because it doesn't stop from month to month. Our genocide doesn't stop temporarily. It's continuous. So yeah, keep paying those monthly reparations, and really show your humanity. Show that you are willing to fall under colonized leadership and commit national suicide, not only class suicide, national suicide as well.
Exactly. And yeah, it's like we just want to reintroduce the book that we're reading, From a Native Daughter by Honani Kai Trask, which takes us through Hawaii and the colonialism that occurs there, and the annexation that occurred when the U.S. came in like 1893 and just like completely took over the lands and destroyed it. We're going to go into our book trap trivia.
Yes, our book trap trivia. I'm excited about this question. I think it's a great question. I'm excited to see if y'all have read, if y'all have been keeping up. So our book trap trivia question is, there are more blank on the islands of Hawaii than in all of the United Snakes. A, houseless people, B, homes over $350,000. C, golf courses, or D, extinct and endangered plants and animals. Please drop your guesses drop your answers in the comments, and if you guess incorrectly, you gotta donate to Hammer City. But yeah, let's see if y'all read.
$5, like, let's see if you read, like, because she was laying out all the facts, like about what has occurred within Hawaii and like this ongoing colonialism and genocide of the native peoples and just the lands and everything, the destruction of it. And so, yes, what is the answer? What do you think the answer is? So is it A? Is it D?
Okay, we got one answer so far. Y'all are not reading with us? Come on. So we got one answer from Chief Yabe. They said B. Their guess is B. Okay.
Y'all wake up.
Yeah, it's not that early. Y'all.
Well, isn't it that early where you are? Like,
it's a little early, but honestly, I got used to it. Like, I like waking up at this time now. I'm like, oh, the sunrise, so beautiful. Okay, Chief Yabe said B. Jen said D. Benjamin said D. Okay.
She ran with D. All right. She tried D.
Okay, a mix of B's and D's. Okay.
We love to see it.
Okay, should we tell them? Chief Federico, or should we wait for some more answers to come in?
We can give the answer, but remember, if you got it wrong, you gotta donate $5 to Hammer City. Yes. It's D. Some of y'all didn't read. Y'all better get back in that book and start reading.
Yes, but I also want to talk. Like, I also understand the answer everybody gave for B, because they did talk about how the homes are over $350,000. Like, that is so much money. Like, and on an island, and that was in 1999. Like, we're in 2021. Those houses are easily over $1 million, very easily.
Yeah, they just keep sucking up all of the land. It's so sad to see.
Chief Yabe said, "I'm donating $5. There you go. Yeah, there's no shame in getting it wrong."
Wow. Yes, Chief Watakame, $5, another $5.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, there you go. We're just closer to our freedom. That much closer. So yeah, let's just to reintroduce everybody to the book that we're reading. We are reading Honani Kai Trask's from a native daughter. Yeah, and we will be hopping into these Read That backs. Ooh, Addie Love with the $10. Thank you, Chief Addie. Ooh. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly, Komel. Like, it wasn't even surprising that they eradicated literally most of the biodiversity on the island. Like, and Hawaii, like, the islands aren't even that big. Like, the landmass in total is not even that great. Like, I don't know. It's just so shocking to like really learn that and internalize like how much death they have imposed not only on colonized people but to all like colonized life. It's so disgusting.
Yeah, and that's what we see, right, with like this ongoing climate crisis. It's just like this collapse of ecosystems and biodiversity systems, right? And like the extinction of species that are so important to biodiversity systems, right? Especially in like, these lands of Hawaii and these islands, and colonialism has destroyed so much of it, right? For golf courses, for hotels, like, for tourism. And it's just so awful to see. Like that's why we build in Hammer City. We gonna get like in the deepest parts of the ocean. We gonna get that plastic out. We gonna save the earth.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because with colonized unity comes colonized brilliance, and really that is unstoppable. That's really just so unstoppable. Like the best of them cannot even compete with the worst of us. Punto. Like. Okay, so let's hop into this Read That Back. We will be reading my Read That Back first. It is on page 117. So, suddenly, the entire sweep of our written history was clear to me. I was reading the West's view of itself through the degradation of my own past. When historians wrote that the king owned the land and the common people were bound to it, they were saying that ownership was the only way human beings in their world could relate to the land, and in that relationship, some one person had to control both the land and the interactions between humans. And when they said our chiefs were despotic, they were telling of their own society, where hierarchy always resulted in domination. Thus, any authority or elder was automatically suspected of tyranny. And when they wrote that the Hawaiians were lazy, they meant that work must be continuous and ever a burden. When they wrote that we were promiscuous, they meant that lovemaking in the Christian West was a sin. When they wrote that we were racist because we preferred our own ways to theirs, they meant that their culture needed to dominate others. And when they wrote that we were superstitious in believing of the mana of nature and people, they meant that the West had long since lost its deep spiritual connection and cultural relationship to the earth. And when they wrote that Hawaiians were primitive in their grief over the passing of loved ones, they meant that the West grieves for the living who do not walk among their ancestors. For so long, more than half my life, I had misunderstood this written record, thinking it described my own people. But this history was nowhere present. For we had not written. We had chanted and sailed and fished and built and prayed. We had told stories through great bloodlines of memory, genealogy. To know my history, I had to put the books away and return to the land. I had to plant taro in the earth before I could understand the inseparable bond between the people and Aina. I had to feel again the spirits of nature and take gifts of plants and fish to the ancient altars. I had to begin to speak my language with our elders and leave long silences of wisdom to grow. Before anything else, I had to learn the language like a lover so I could rock within her and lay at night in her dreaming arms. Lamb back, everybody. I love that Read That Back so much. It completely like solidifies our third principle of unity, that the root of all evil that plagues all colonized people is colonialism and neo-colonialism. They literally manipulated our histories. They tried to tell us who we were and who we are not. And I just thought that was so powerful, where everything that they wrote about the indigenous Hawaiians and literally all colonized people by that extent was a lie. It was a projection of what their disgusting practices were, and continue to be. So I just really united with that, and the fact that we have to begin to reclaim our culture, not in this very liberal way, but in a way that is revolutionary. Like, we are reclaiming ourselves, we are reclaiming our people, because they weren't able to. Yeah, spiritual connection. Like, as an indigenous person, I pray to the land. I get on all fours and I pray onto the earth. I I'm thankful, I'm grateful that I live another day where I can fight for her liberation, where I can fight for the liberation of all colonized life. And I thank her for guiding and protecting me. But also by that extent, I pray to my ancestors who guide and protect me every single day. And it is all about that spiritual connection. It's all about just recognizing that we are not alone, even when we are physically alone. So yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Chief Federico.
Yeah, land back. Like Chief Alma said in the comments, right? Like this is such a down to earth passage and really lays it out, like, how the written text within the West by white people, right? Like through anthropology and historical analysis of our peoples, right? It's just really so exploitative and so colonial. It's just, all to further and justify this colonial relationship that Euro Americans, that white people have to the world, right? And it's all projection, right, of like how Europe was, right, like this feudal system in which then they came to Hawaii and said, oh, the Hawaiians existed within a feudal system. They had this and that, right? But it's like, no, Hawaiian people, like, which Honani Kaitras lays out, like there was love of the land, their people were in harmony with each other in the earth, and like, like this projection too of like love making and sex is a sin, right? And like, like the reason why like, it was like so looked down upon in Europe is because like the Europeans did not even wash themselves, right? And so they spread disease and everything else when they were promiscuous and had sex, right? But like that wasn't the Hawaiians, they knew how to take care of themselves and wash themselves. And Hanani Kaitras like lays out another passage too, like when she talks about how historians, are very much like missionaries, right? Like they were part of the colonizing horde. And so one group in which, colonized the spirit, and then this other group, the historians, colonized the mind. And so this passage just lays it out for us. And what it means to like begin this decolonization process and move away from like these written texts that don't describe us in any way, right? Like that are so racist and so colonial. And like we understand, like ever since colonizers have put pen to paper, like all they've been doing is propagating, right? Because like Hanani Kaitras lays it out, like we were in community, right? Like we didn't just write about each other, like we kept written record of like maybe trade and stuff like that, but it wasn't like, oh, we're like writing down all of our stories. Like we passed those down through like oration, through song, through poem. Whereas like, since like Marco Polo, right? Like you read the book The Travels, it's all like, propaganda about like colonized peoples that's used to justify cultural imperialism and then genocide and then settler colonialism. Yeah, land back, full unity with
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. Full unity with what you just laid out as well. Like it's all projection. It's all projection of how disgusting they are, like, and how far removed they are from humanity. Like how, like, I know every single colonized person has an integral connection to the land. Like we as colonized life rely on it. Like, and we recognize that her liberation is our liberation. We recognize that when she benefits, we benefit. And the colonizers don't have that relationship. Like they have only an exploitative relationship to the land. Like it doesn't matter how like hippie and in tune you are with the land. Like you are still a colonizer. You still enact genocide on colonized people and ecocide on all colonized life. Yes, connecting with Mother Earth, talking to her. We gotta let her know. Yeah, we gotta let our comrade know and show love in every way possible. Exactly, full unity with that. Like that's why we do offer. Like that's why I perform like offerings and rituals. Like because it's just such a beautiful thing, and I want all colonized people to experience that, to be able to actually speak to our ancestors and be guided by them. Like we come from wisdom. We come from wisdom, like hundreds and thousands of years of wisdom. And our ancestors were brilliant, like agricultural scientists. They were warriors. They were like these brilliant, like astronomers. Like colonizers, like your ancestors were rapists. Your ancestors were mass murderers. Like your ancestors were thieves. Like who do you have to pray to? Like, ew.
That's the tea, Chief Pizza. But
Exactly.
yeah,
And just
like no, it's so true, right? But like even before like, like colonialism and then like, the ongoing feudal system that happened and occurred in Europe, right? Like even colonizers were once in tune with the land, right? And like pagan spirituality and then like this whole plague befell like them, right? Because like they began to have like a colonial relationship to the world, right? And like invading the lands of Asia and stuff like that, and we're dirty and stuff like that, and brought disease and plague. And killed off like 1/3 of their population, and then began this horrific structure of colonialism, trying to rebuild their economies, and have destroyed the world ever since.
Mm-hmm. Yep, full unity with that, exactly. And I also just wanted to solidify that this passage really reinforces our third principle of unity. Like, again, that colonizers are the root of all evil. Like, literally everywhere, every single place on Earth, not only in Hawaii, but literally every other colonized place on Earth. It is the root. Colonialism is the root of all evil. And like, they trying to manipulate our histories to paint us out as the evil people, like as the villains, like, you have to do so much and to manipulate the narrative to paint us, the colonized masses, as the villains. You know what I'm saying? And this doesn't only happen then through like written history, through academic written history, but it happens in the media. It happens through other forms of propaganda where they villainize us. They still continue to villainize us. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Land back. Yeah, and like, it relates so much to, especially like with the whole LGBTQ movement and like pink washing, especially, right? Like in which, colonized nations are painted as like these barbaric, homophobic, transphobic places. But who made them into these places, right? Like what? Like the whole gender binary was not a system of colonized peoples, right? We celebrated and uplifted peoples of all like genders and sexuality and like all of our expressions, right? But through like these colonial divisions that were bred with this colonial Judeo Christianity, right? Like it bred this horrific like transphobia and homophobia into our community. And now like colonizers and colonizer countries will say, oh, these countries are so backwards and they still practice this, even though like they still reap the rewards of it to this day.
Exactly. Full unity with that. And it's like, it's just the audacity of like the white gays to be like, oh, like Uganda, like they're so barbaric. Like, first of all, it's your people who did that. Like our cultures have, like you said, our cultures have been honoring and respecting like, other people who fall outside of the gender binary, because gender binary was not a thing. Yes, white people forced their ancestral trauma onto everyone. Ooh,
Yeah.
let's not get started on that one. But yeah, I fully unite with that. Yeah, and it's just like it's just disgusting. And yeah, we have existed this entire time. Like trans people, queer people, we have been existing. This is nothing new. Like this is nothing like that comes out here.
Yes, and what did Comrade Nepal say? I just want to like bring that up because they say they jealous of the beauty and brilliance that is the connection we have to Mother Earth. All colonized people have established that relationship with her, and the whites try to rip that from us every chance they get. But we continue to persevere and land back. Yes, full unity. We continue even through colonialism to maintain our cultures and spirituality, our practices, and like, fight for the land. Like we've been fighting for over 600 years, right? Like there's not a moment of time where you can't find colonized peoples resisting this continued colonialism and oppression, right? And it's all because like white people just decided to blow themselves up and kill each other on that dead rock and then export it to the rest of the world. Like, and that's the world we're suffering under. So.
Exactly. Full unity with that. So let's get into these read that backs. If you have a read that back, drop it in the chat, and we will get to those. Alrighty. So we have. Ooh, let's highlight Benjamin's comment. Colonialism tricks our people into thinking that we had these massive, violent, dehumanizing values, but it ain't natural to us. Exactly. Full unity with that. Like, we don't know how to do that. Like, what are you saying? Like, so yeah, I fully know with that. Like, oh god, we could really get into that. Like,
and then Quamel says, I went to college with a gay Dutch girl who said she could never go to Indonesia because of your ancestors. Exactly. Like what? The Dutch colonized Indonesia. Like literally colonizers, and it's like crazy because then they'll say like, oh, I can't visit this country or that country because they're homophobic. Like first off, you're white, you'll be just fine. Like when you visit these countries, like no one's gonna imprison you because they understand like if they were to attack you, right? Like you have white power, these empires like America and Europe to back you, right? But then, it's just to push this like agenda, this colonial agenda, right? To continue oppressing and dominating the colonized world in every way possible.
Exactly. Full unity. Like you did that. Like, and like you said, like again, your whiteness comes before anything else. Like your whiteness comes above your queer sexuality, your like transgender identity, whatever it may be. Like you are still white. You are still white. Okay, you have the entire force of these like white power states to protect you. Exactly. So
Yeah.
like it's literally your doing, and you're not even affected by it. That is the thing. Like white people who are quote unquote oppressed try so hard to relate themselves to colonized people, where it's like we are not the same in any capacity. Like you're mad you only have access to 95% of white supremacy. Like how's that my problem?
Exactly. It's like they think being gay or like having ADHD makes them a person of color, a colonized person, right? And it's like, what? No, that's just not your material reality to the world. Like, you're white, for like first and foremost, right? And like that's your material relationship to the world.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I want to go into an audience, read that back. I want to pull up Chief Yabe's, read that back. So for those who disagree, there really is no middle ground. Non-natives, no matter how long their residence in Hawaii, should acknowledge their status as settlers. That is uninvited guests in our native country. And so Chief Yabe lays out, like, I disunite with this part of the PE because it promotes divisionism. For the colonized, under they can serve white power or be victims of poor and working class. Neither are settlers, but one is a puppet hoarding the wealth from our labor. Land back, and yes, like Honani Kai struggles with this, right? Like understanding why there is Asian people, like an Asian poor and working class within the lands of Hawaii, who now have largely mixed with Hawaiians, right? Like you have plenty of, like Native Hawaiians who are also mixed with like Asian peoples. And it was because of this peonage that was visited on Asian peoples and how they were brought over to work on these plantations in Hawaii and basically be a slave labor force. And like they're not settlers, they're not reaping the benefits of white power, of colonialism, right? They continue to be oppressed and subjugated under this. But in terms of like, obviously like this Halle class, like the white class of Hawaii, they're the ones who are the settlers. They're the ones who benefit from the settler colonial structure that, destroys the native populations, that visits peonage upon the Asian people there. But yeah, I fully unite with like Chief Yabe's disunity with this, part because like, as principle of unity number 2 lays out, like all colonized proletariat are equal, right? Because we're united under this colonial struggle.
Exactly. Full unity was what you just laid out, and also unity with Chief Yave's disunity. With that, read that back. Yeah, Kwani K. Trask really does struggle with that. They do have a lot of divisionist tendencies, to be honest. Like not only between colonized people, but divisions between colonized people and gender. Which that's also something that she needs to struggle with because we recognize that we are all equal. We are all equal in the same way that we are all necessary. Like we're all necessary in this ecosystem. Like we're all equal. Like we may be different in some aspects, but we are all equal. In the same way that a bee and an ant are both equal to an ecosystem, but they're different. They're fundamentally different. And that's just really to further internalize that we're an extent of the land. Like the land doesn't have these divisions, like there may be different ecosystems, like there's a desert, plainlands, like mountain ranges, but they're all equal. They're all so fundamentally important. So that's also something that she really needs to struggle with. And also, like it's really in disunity with our second principle because you wouldn't call African people settlers. You wouldn't call enslaved Africans who were brought to Turtle Island settlers. You know what I'm saying? So why would you do the same to Asian people? Why would you, and like you laid out, like it's a difference between being literally having to come to a place to work because you have no other option versus being the ruling class who dominates all life on the island. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very different. So yeah, I'm back.
100%. And like Benjamin lays out too, like a lot of the Puerto Ricans in Hawaii were sent to work on pineapple plantations after the snakes took over both lands. Exactly, right? And like the land of Borigen or colonized name Puerto Rico is like, one of the oldest colonies. Like colonialism moves us around to do its bidding. Colonized peoples need to be united. Period, right? And like obviously, the indigenous people and African people of Puerto Rico who were like moved to the land of Hawaii to work on these plantations, right? Like, are really just a slave labor force, right? To benefit the Halle class, to benefit the white colonizer class, right? And I think Honani Kai Trask like struggles with this understanding because, there is like Japan, right, which is like very much a neo-colonial imperialist force, like, which you have these Japanese investors that come up and buy up the land of Hawaii, to build hotels, golf courses, and also profit. But like that's neo-colonialism, which we understand, right? Like all the problems that we face as colonized peoples come from colonialism and submissive neo-colonialists in our nation. And like these Japanese investors are white power in Asian face. That's what they represent because they still don't even have dictatorship over their own lands, over their own lives, right? And resources, because Japan is a colonized nation subjected to colonial capitalism. It was literally atomic bombed by the United Snakes, right? Like that just tells you the material relationship that this nation has to the white world, to the European world. And so I think that's why Dr. Honani Kadras like struggles with that too. Is like because she does see like these Japanese investors buying up the land, but it is white power in Asian face, and it represents like this neo-colonial relationship that colonized peoples can have to the world.
Yeah, full unity with what you just laid out. Because again, that is our third principle of unity. It's not only colonialism at the hands of a colonizer, a white colonizer, but it's also neo-colonialism. Unfortunately, it's neo-colonialism in African face, in brown face, in representative in Asian people. For example, like Japan, and like you just really brilliantly laid out, like they serve the interests of white power, but they themselves don't even have access to their resources, because they're puppets. They're literally puppets.
100%. Like Japan is like the Japanese are so worked to death. You know what I mean? Like, don't they have like entire studies of how like Japanese people literally drop dead from working like such long days because like their material relationship under colonial capitalism is as a colonized people that are exploited by the European world.
Exactly. And like Benjamin said, people got to understand that we ain't going to be able to solve any beefs between us as colonized people unless we got the power to do so by defeating colonialism. Exactly. Like we can't be, this divisionism only benefits them. Like they only benefit when we are divided, because imagine like all colonized people around the world uniting against white power. We are unstoppable, literally unstoppable. Not only different kinds of colonized people, but globally, like geographically, different places everywhere. So yeah, I fully unite with that.
Yes, full unity. And like obviously, there's a Japanese foreign working class, there's like, Asian foreign working class, like, as colonized proletariat, like we understand we're all united in the struggle. That divisionism doesn't serve us because like these colonial divisions are bred by colonialism to ensure that we never rise up, right? And like they're so nefarious too, and like the way they breed these divisions, in terms of like race science, in terms of blood quantum, in terms of race mixing, like in which they say you're not like enough of this or that, right? To all ensure that you never unite and come together and end the colonial structure once and for all. Yes, let's get into our next read that back, which is me. Get to my page, but I like this read that back because it like goes into like this struggle that Honani Trask has with this white woman anthropologist who basically creates this false understanding of the native people of Hawaii and their love of the land, and uses it to justify like colonialism and obviously the oppression of Hawaiians, and like goes into saying like, oh, like they created this love of the land so that the military would stop bombing Hawaii, which is a horrific thing, but like and like to further Hawaiian nationalism and the Hawaiian struggle, and says it's like made up. And so this is Honani Trask like struggling with this, like talking about this issue, in which she says, in short, because Linnegan, who's this white woman anthropologist, wanted to publish an allegedly scholarly article applying the inventing tradition, inventing culture school of thought to Hawaiians, we the native people are now faced with a proliferating ideology that is hurting our real culture every day, hurting real Hawaiians every day, and that is being used over and over to undermine our claim to say who and what we are. Of course, Hawaiian nationalists claim to knowledge is our life experiences as natives within a culture that is 2,000 years old. Linnegan's claim to knowledge is her brief training in Michigan as an anthropologist. But the problem is more serious than epistemology. In a colonial world, the work of anthropologists and other Western-trained experts is used to disparage and exploit natives. Thus, what Lincoln writes about Hawaiians has more potential power than what Hawaiians write. Proof of this rests in the use of Lincoln's argument by the U.S. Navy that Hawaiian nationalists have invented the sacred meaning of Kaho, I'm going to slaughter this, Olawe Island. Here, the connection between anthropology and the colonial enterprise is explicit. When natives accuse Western scholars of exploiting them, they have in mind the exact kind of situation I am describing. So beneath this academic reaction to native assertions of our own culture is the entire question of evidence. How could an obviously wrong-headed statement about Hawaiians inventing their love for the land become such an oft-repeated fact? The answer is simple. A different standard of proof operates when natives are involved. Every reiteration of the fact of our cultural invention reinforces it as a truism. Because of a deep-rooted racism at the core of Western history, negative descriptions are believed without the slightest shred of evidence because the people in question are natives. Were the same statements to be made about white people, careful examination of evidence and demands for more of it would be assumed. Not so with natives. And so I wanted to then connect this to just like an end quote on 132 in which she lays out, in Hawaii, Hawaiians are categorized as just another group of immigrants who happened along some 2,000 years ago before whites and Asians. Words like indigenous are never used by scholars or lay people to describe Hawaiians, nor is the word settler used to describe immigrants. As racist as this obviously is, the denial of native history, culture, and humanity is central to the colonial endeavor. Archaeology and anthropology in Hawaii as elsewhere are integral parts of the mammoth Euro-American project to dominate the human and natural world. So I just love this PE because it talks about like how every part of the colonial structure in its entirety is used to advance and further colonialism, which includes this form of cultural imperialism that these anthropologists and historians enact on the native Hawaiians. Because like as settlers, as Euro-Americans, like their number one job is one to just totally erase the native, right? And like displace them and genocide, us in every way possible, and then write a false history about us to continue justifying this settler colonial structure. And that's what these historians and anthropologists do, right? Like they don't truly understand Hawaiians, like they have no knowledge of their language, their practices. They just go in, look at some artifacts. They might live with like a few natives, but it's all an extractive relationship to produce these reports and these scholarly reports and everything that one is just like totally made up. Is like anthropologists like don't actually care to study, right? And then what occurs with academia is like these reports are then taken by the U.S. military, by defense industries, to then be used to then justify bombing Hawaiians, bombing colonized peoples, destroying their lands, saying like, oh, like before like we arrived, like you existed in this way, right? Like infanticide, or they said like they made up this whole thing like that Hawaiians like struggle with infanticide, like killing off their own children, which is not true at all, or that they had this feudal relationship to the land, that they own the land, which is not true at all. Like right, like Hawaiian indigenous people have this love of the land, the care for the land, right? Servants of the land. So it's all used to like justify this continued oppression and colonialism. And so that's what she lays out. And then obviously it relates back to our principles of unity, which we understand like all of our struggles come from colonialism in this way, right? And like this includes academia, colonial academia. And then also because we don't have dictatorship over our land, lives, labor, and resources, right? Like we don't have this dictatorship in any way. So like, the native peoples of Hawaii are so oppressed, like these anthropologists and historians can come in and like even take in their remains and study them and then pump out this false information. So,
yeah. Exactly. Full unity with what you just said. And a parallel that I made between anthropologists and missionaries was that missionaries were like, oh, we are righteous in our colonization because it's guided by Jesus. Like this is the same way with anthropology, where it's like we're righteous because it's in the name of science. Like both are exploitative, both only harm and literally genocide colonize and specifically indigenous people in this context. And I would love to highlight Chief Alma-Leach's comment where they said colonizers just ripped that out of the people too, but colonized people engage with in true struggle to reconnect with their ancestors, land, and themselves. Full unity. I love that. Full unity with that. Like, because we are engaging with that every single day. Like, we don't have to extract the bones, the literal remains of our ancestors to be reconnected with them. We pray to them. We are enveloped in their love and guidance. Like, so I really fully unite with what Chief Alma-Leach just laid out. Anthropologists are some of the most disgusting beings on the planet. Full unity with that. Like, it's it's the same people that are comparing like different colonized people's skulls to a colonizer skull and being like, oh, this is representative of how genius like colonizers are. Like, what and these are the people you're trying to listen to. These are the people that you're trying to justify the science that they're creating. Like, no, like these are the people that are perpetuating race science to continue. Like, like, not on my watch.
It's such a false and demonic history, right? Like that they construct. And so, yeah, Chief Alma and colonizer anthropology is so disgusting. We see how that's been proven with the parasite who stole the bones of children that died in the moon bombing. No, exactly, right? Like these bones, like of children killed in this brutal, horrific moon bombing, like were literally trafficked between University of Pennsylvania and Princeton to be studied by white colonizers to further this, like, colonizer science, right? Like, it's not like they're talking about colonized peoples in like a positive way and upholding our humanity, right? Like, literally, this disgusting woman was holding up the bones of this child and saying, like, oh, it's so juicy and it's this and that, right? And studying it for forensic science. But like, what the hell? Like, why do you one need the bones of children to study for like forensic science? Like that's just not what we did as colonized peoples pre-colonization anyway, right? Like, our science came from our love of the land, our love of the people, right? And it was like, just natural observation of the world. Like we didn't need to dig up the remains of our peoples to understand who we are and how to exist in harmony with the earth. Like these colonizers are so disgusting and they have this like horrific fascination with like our bones and remains. Like what? It's so infuriating too.
Exactly. And like we had laid out previously, like we don't have dictatorship, and when we say dictatorship we mean control. We mean control over our land, lives, labor, and resources. Just so any colonized people who are afraid of that word, because we recognize that word has been propagandized as well, to instill fear in colonized people, where it's like, no, we just want control over our own lives. Like we don't have that control. And even after death, they don't even see our humanity. They don't even we don't even have control over our own body after we are dead. You know what I'm saying? Like a child who was literally murdered by the state, her bones are being used around and literally trafficked essentially. Like, and same thing with the indigenous people of Hawaii. Like you decimate a population when you first land to 90, like you eradicate 90% of the people, and then you're digging up their bones.
Right.
Like you are disgusting.
To do what? And it's just like all to produce this false understanding of the people. And like Manani Kai like lays that out, in which like she's like these anthropologists and historians will like go visit, and stay with native populations. But it's never for the benefit of them, right? It's all to be extractive and exploitative and ultimately like further their destruction, and like they just don't care, right? And like, colonizers like to think that they have this ethics and humanity, but like what is ethical about this in any way to like take knowledge that might even be important, right, for like the Hawaiian Native people, to like further their own struggle against colonialism, and might be sacred to them and like something they don't want to share with the outside world, and then you take it, publish it in paper, and then it goes to like the U.S. military industrial complex, right, to then continue this horrific oppression and genocide. Like, and that's just what we see with colonial academia, like, just worldwide, right? Like, it's the same thing they do with the lands of Asia, the same things they do with Latin America, right? They publish these reports, these, scholarly, like, academia reports, and it's all used to further genocide and oppression.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And I want to highlight like Comrade DH's comment where it says the people that want to claim that ancient colonized people, quote, couldn't have couldn't have made their amazing structures without help. Exactly. These are the same people that are perpetuating this BS that we literally factually know is incorrect. Like, have you seen Egypt? Have you seen the Mayans? The Mayan? Have you seen like literally most of Turtle Island? Like, what are you talking about? Like, so yes, I fully unite with that. And like this science is literally used to perpetuate our genocide, to continue it. And like Chief Nopal had said, like we can't even like rest in peace. Y'all can't even leave us alone after death. Like, like damn, like disgusting, so disgusting. But there is a solution for this, luckily. Like if you are a colonized person who wants to stop the degradation of our ancestors even after death, but also to gain control of your own life, join Black Hammer. Join Black Hammer. We are literally the only revolutionary org that's actually about it. Like an ex-CIA operative wrote about us and said that we are the ones to watch, that we are the ones to fear. Like we are not playing games about revolution. And the ex-CIA operative wrote that. Like, you think I'm gonna listen to a Ku Klux communist that's like terminally online when a CIA operative literally dedicated his entire career to taking down revolutionary movements is telling us that we are serious?
Right. And like wasn't even like at the end like we can unite and like take out Black Hammer. It was like no, like we better listen to them before it's too late because they know it's the end. You know what I mean? Like we're watching this empire crumble worldwide, like, and like we see it with the state of is it real, right? And like what's going on in this ramping up of bombings of the Gaza Strip, right? Like this military satellite of the United States is collapsing, and it's used to maintain hegemonic control of that region, also extract oil and resources, right, from that area. And like, it's so reflective of the U.S. because like it has been a puppet of the U.S. to maintain control over the lives of Arabs for so long, and to extract their oil and resources. And now it's collapsing, right? Like they've had 4 elections in 2 years, they still can't figure out a leader. The Palestinians are resisting. There's an axis of resistance forming with like resistance groups of like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, like, offering to be on standby and in support of the Palestinians. And like we're just watching it fall out, and it's like so beautiful to watch. Like, we gotta understand, like as colonized peoples, we gotta come together, like, because as this empire crumbles, right? Like, what do colonizers do? Like, saw with World War I, World War II, they get more violent. They try to hang on in every possible way. Like Black Hammer's got this defense apparatus. We doing everything for our people. So
exactly, full unity, and also full unity with the resistance and the Palestinian people in Palestine. Like the right to return it's coming. Land back is coming. Land back is happening. And I also want to highlight Comrade DH's comment real quick, that they do this not only to limit our rich history, but our progression. Exactly. Like when we don't know who we were, we don't know our potential. We don't know what we can build, and as colonized revolutionaries, we have recognized our potential. We recognize our power, and now we build. It's one thing to talk, and it's another thing to build. So speaking of building, yes, let's get into our fundraising call, our second fundraising call for Hammer City. And Chief Federico, do you want to announce how much money we have raised so far?
Yeah, so we hit $264. But we know we can do better than that, like let's aim for 350. Cause don't y'all want to be free? Like, don't y'all want to be in Hammer City? Like, y'all watching your comrades dedicate their lives to building an entire city. Like, why do you not want to support that? Like, like it's so beautiful to like just watch like our comrades like just build this entire city for us to get us free, right? Like to get all colonized peoples free. Like it's going to serve as the first anti-colonial zone to further the struggle of anti-colonial revolution and liberation of all colonized people.
Exactly. And I'm so excited for Hammer City. There's so many things we're gonna learn. Like I want to learn how to hunt like my ancestors who honorably used every single part of our animal, like our animal relatives. Like, but same thing with like plants. When we really think about it, like indigenous and African, like all colonized people, essentially used every single part of not only the plant, because we recognize that is our relative, but also other animal relatives. Like living in harmony is what we do. It's literally how we move. Like, yes, there you go. $25 in reparations, Comrade Executive. There you go.
We love those reparations.
Let's see more of these donations coming in, more of these reparations coming in. I like the 2-digit reparations. That's cute. Let's see some 3 digits though.
Maybe even 4 digits,
Yes. $5 on Hammer City. Home Dome. Yes. Chief Amalicha.
Yeah.
Chief Amalicha wants to be free.
Yes, Tiba got $10. Yes, Chief Brand with another $5. Yes, y'all want to get free, like we see it, you know. Y'all put in like every penny and dollar you have, you know, and like we gonna be free. Like I'm so excited for Hammer City. Like as I laid out before, like honestly, like I almost cried like watching just like the plans laid out for Hammer City. Like I didn't realize like just what colonized brilliance really is until like I watched it all laid out, you know. And we're laying it out in our Tuesday rallies. Like if you come through to our Tuesday rallies, right? Like we've been discussing our plans for Hammer City, the structures we're gonna build, like just like this whole Walpini food structure and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like all these colonizers like to say like you can't do this up in the mountains and you can't grow this, but it's like no, we got it all figured out.
Like you can't do that. You
Right.
cannot do that. We, the colonized masses, like we are so brilliant. Like it's just so beautiful. Once you really tap into that, you recognize how brilliant you are, not only as an individual, but as a collective, especially. You're like, oh my God, like we are unstoppable. And if I were you, I'd be shaking too. I'd be fearful too. Like, but yes, shout out to Comrade Leo. Yes, our comrade in the garden committee. If you want to join the garden committee, email us at joincampaigns.com. But yes, blessing us with those angel numbers 333. Yes.
Wow.
There you go. Another 15.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarcophagus, with another $15. Also, I'm loving this new logo for, I guess, you know, our reparations core people. Like, always hit, like, visual propaganda is always hitting with these great logos and everything.
Yes.
But, yeah, like, keep it coming, y'all. Like, because Hammer City's right around the corner. It really is.
Yes, it literally is right around the corner. Like, it's coming. I'm so excited. Like, Walapini structures are coming, home domes are coming. Like, I'm so excited. We're gonna have a little area, like a little studio for our art therapy sessions. It's gonna be so beautiful. And to live in a world where I can walk outside, go to our little market, get some free food, get some free cucumbers, and just eat it on the way and not be afraid that I'm gonna be assaulted by a police officer, by a colonizer, by just, you know, affirm every beautiful colonized person I see. Like, we are beautiful, we are brilliant, we are on the winning team, you know, like I'm excited for that. I'm just so excited. And to live in a world where there's no crackers, like
Yeah, you know.
exquisite.
And like furthering this anti-colonial struggle, right? Like understanding that, like, you know, if you want to get on the right side of history as a colonizer, right, you have to fall under the leadership of colonized peoples, because like the way this world works, right, is like it breeds you into the either the colonizer or the colonized, because that's how it works, you know. And if you want to get on the right side of history and end this colonial structure that is literally killing the planet, Black Hammer is it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Black Hammer is it. Yes, join us at blackhammer.org/join. Yes. Shout out to Chief Ture and Chief Oju, our amazing instructors in leadership and reparations corps. We are here because of them. Oh, I love that. Yes. Salute to Chief Ture and Chief Oju that do so much for the org and like are such brilliant and dedicated revolutionaries. Just so much love to them. So shout out to them. But with that, we'll be moving into our next Read That Back. It is my Read That Back on page 142 and 143. So we can pull that up. Awesome. Okay. Okay, so of course, the cultural revitalization of that Hawaiians are now experiencing and transmitting to their children is as much as repudiation of colonialism by the so-called Western civilization in its American form, as it is reclamation of our own past and our own ways of life. This is why cultural revitalization is often resisted and disparaged by anthropologists and others that see very clearly its political effect is decolonization of the mind. Thus, our rejection of the nuclear family as a basic unit of society and of individualism as the best form of human expression infuriates social workers, the churches, the legal system, and educators to this day. Hawaiians continue to adopt, quote, illegitimate children to hanaina, or adopt both children and adults outside of the sanctioned Western legal concepts, to hold and to use land and water in a collective form rather than private property form, and to prescribe the notion and value that one person should strive to surpass and therefore outshine all others. All of these Hawaiian values can be grouped together under the idea of ohana, loosely translated as family, but more accurately imagined as a group of both closely and distantly related people who share nearly everything from the land to the from the land and food to the children and status. Sharing is central to this value since it prevents individual decline. Of course, poverty is not thereby avoided. Of course, poverty is not thereby avoided. It can only be shared with everybody in the unit. The ohana works efficiently when the kuana relationship, elder/younger sibling reciprocity, is practiced. So skipping down a little bit, Hawaii itself is a female object Hawaii itself is the female object of degraded and victimized sexual value. Our aina, or lands, are no longer the source of food or shelter, but a source of money. The land is now called real estate rather than our mother, papa. The American relationship of people to the land is that of exploiter to exploited. Beautiful areas once sacred to my people are now expensive resorts. Shorelines where fish netting, seaweed gathering, and crabbing occurred more and more. The exclusive domain of recreational activities such as sunbathing, windsurfing, and jet skiing. Now even the beaches near hotels is strictly regulated or denied to the local public altogether. Land back. Whew, Lord, that was a lot. There's a lot I really want to outline in this, but this is really just reinforces our second and third principles of unity for me. That our second principle of unity, that we're all equal, and the part where ohana loosely translates to all like people sharing things together, being in collective relationship. That's how I feel about Black Hammer, y'all. Like that is so beautiful because we are building a world. We are dedicating our lives to building a better world, not only for ourselves but for all colonized people. And that's just really beautiful, because we protect each other. There is like very deep love I have for my comrades because we again like who is dedicating their entire life to the liberation of all colonized life. That is a big step, but that's a step that we all need to take, and it brings us closer together because in struggle, there's struggle, but there's also unity. And I really love that. And also just want to talk about how there's a difference between reclaiming your culture and performing it under the white gaze and being very liberal about it. And there's a difference between reclaiming your culture and actually beginning the process of decolonization, like ridding all the land of everything that is European. Like performing our cultural practices need to be a threat to the colonizer. Not, oh, look, it's so fun. Look at me dancing. Like, this is fun. No, this is a threat to you. Like, you need to remember who I am and who I come from. This is a threat to you. This is a nonverbal threat that I'm coming for your. So yes, I fully unite with this PE, and just the way that Hawaii has been essentially degraded in the same way that colonizers degrade women and non-men. Like they continue to degrade us in ways that, like it's just very disgusting to me. And I just want to talk about that and how it's only an exploitative relationship. Like all colonizers know is to exploit not only the people but the land. Like, and I think Hoani K. Trask really outlines that really beautifully in this Read That Back. So yeah, what do you think, Federico?
Land back, yeah, full unity with this PE. I always think of like when I hear Ohana, like it's so bad, but Lilo and Stitch, which Ohana means family, and family means no one gets left behind, right? But like, it's so true, right? 'Cause, like this idea of like individualism and the nuclear basic family is one that's just like so awful because it does leave family behind. Because like you're a reflection of all your ancestors, all your relatives, right? And like Hawaiian indigenous people, like other colonized communities, have existed in community with each other and didn't have this nuclear basic family concept. We all took care of each other, took care of the land, right? Whereas like this whole like, oh, I only care for like my immediate family, like my parents, and then like my brothers and sisters, right? Like it's just so toxic and so destructive, right? Because it just like want to separate you from your people, separate you from even your relatives, your blood relatives, right? And then what does that do to you then in terms of like connection to the land, right? And connection to your culture, everything else. And so I love how she lays it out in which she's like, this is part of the decolonization process, right? Rejecting this like understanding of individualism and the nuclear basic family and all of these Western colonial values. And then also with the real estate and the land, right? Like I love how she like makes this comparison, like the prostitution of the land, right? Because it's so exploitative and extractive, and it's just like no, Hawaiian people had this love and care for the land, and then these Western colonizers come in, destroy the land, sell it off. It's just real estate, right? And then also commodify and sell off every part of Hawaiian culture for tourism, for colonial tourism. So yeah, full unity with this. And I want to see some comments too from some people, like about this PE as well.
Yes, yes. Let's get to thoughts, comments, unity, disunity. Yeah, let's see if I'd be into. I'd be willing to struggle. See what y'all think. But also, I just wanted to add, like, she really emphasizes the importance of caring for each other collectively because that prevents our individual decline. And that's what something colonizers literally don't understand. Like, the best thing for you is the best thing for the collective. Like being in a revolutionary collective, that I really have fully internalized that. Like I need to take care of myself. I need to, eat well, sleep, do exercise, take care of my mental health, because not only is that good for me, but it's the best thing for the collective. That'll help us grow collectively. And colonizers are so individualistic that they don't realize why there's so much suffering. It's like you literally caused that. Like when you're complaining about being homeless, like you did that. Like you literally, like your individualism caused people to be so afraid to reach out for help. You know what I'm saying? Like it's shame people into not wanting to, into rather like being houseless than reaching out for help. It's disgusting.
Yeah. They won't even reach out to their own family, right? Like that's just the crazy part. Yes, Hamar Petunia says that's the literal definition of no one gets left behind. Exactly, like family's so critical, and like this colonial structure works to even sever you from your family through this nuclear basic family concept, right? Then you have these social workers that come in, especially in police colonized communities, right? Like they're pigs, they're feds, they're extensions of the state, and they take colonized children and traffic them within this foster care system, right? They do the same thing with Hawaiian indigenous children, right? Like they're literally stolen from their parents, from their family, because of colonial contradictions created by the structure, because of poverty created by the structure, and given to white parents, given to colonizer parents, right? Who are not going to connect them with their land and their culture, right? Like we even have comrades within our organization who were stolen from their family, right? Like traffic, because that's what it is. It's trafficking of children to be sold off to white people, to colonizers, through this adoption process. And like that's so horrific, right? Because it disconnects you from your parents, your land, your culture. Also, that colonizers can be happy with a little colonized child.
Sorry, I just watched a bird fly straight into my window. I was like, oh my god. But yes, full unity with that. And I just want to highlight Comrade Churro's, or Chief Churro's comment as well. Yeah, we are all working to liberate ourselves and everything on this planet. And also when she said unity with all this, individualism dies when your survival depends on the collective. Yes, full unity, like exactly. Like we cannot survive without the collective. Like in the same way that we cannot survive without the land. Like we do not exist without the land. We do not exist without our collective, our community, essentially. Yes, they only see us as machine-like workers for their benefit. Shame our human needs. Exactly, exactly. Full unity with that, Sebastian. Like they only see us as workers, as labor that they can exploit. Like, and honestly, they don't even see us as workers because that would imply that we have some type of humanity. They see us below than that. They only see us to extract our resources. Like we are only production for them. They don't even see our humanity. They don't, and we're not begging the colonizer to see our humanity. We need to recognize it within ourselves. But more importantly, like, yes, internalizing our history is important. Learning our history and learning where we come from is very important, but we have to do something about it. It's the same way people just post things on Instagram and post stories like, okay, that's cool, but what are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing? Like, what are you actually building towards a liberated world? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Full unity, like the collective is everything, and like we at Black Hammer understand that, right? Because like we are this family connected and anti-colonial struggle, right? Like rejecting all of these colonial values, and as colonized proletariat existing to further our liberation, and the collective liberation of all colonized peoples, and we rely on each other as the collective, you know? Which is like definitely in contradiction to individualism, to liberalism, to these Western colonial values. And two wanted to highlight like Benjamin just laid it out in one simple thing. Like they see us as the loot. Like that's what we are. Like you know what I mean. Colonized peoples are the loot in every way possible. Um, yep, we are not the workers. We are the loot. Yep, Chief Ture. Like that's exactly it. Like through everything, right? Like through basically our slave labor, right? Like that provides for this colonial capitalist structure, to this propaganda machine that only uses us to further colonialism, right? Like, how do they uplift even indigenous peoples, right? Like, it's to further this colonial relationship to the world. And it's just, you know, we're just looting every way possible.
Exactly. And I'd love to highlight Comrade DH's comment where it's like, there's no point in practicing theory if it's not put into practice. There's no point in practicing theory if it's not put into practice. If it's not going to be put into action. Exactly. Like, what do you really think that you're spamming on Instagram of these stories is doing? To be honest, like, just genuinely, like, what do you think is actually happening? Like, are you going into people's DMs and like actually educating the masses, or just expecting them to do it themselves? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you actually doing? What are you building? Like, you know, theory is cute and all, but where's the praxis? Like, where is the practice? Where is it? Like, literally, we can't see it.
Exactly. Like these Ku Klux communists be out here, like, you know, talking about communism, but it's like, okay, like all they do is just sit and theorize all day, but like there's no practice, there's no practice. And it's because they have this colonial relationship to the world that they don't want to give up, right? Like, how are you going to say you're a communist when you live in a suburban gated community on stolen indigenous land, right? And you're not in a collective to further liberation of the actual proletariat who are oppressed and destroyed under this system, right? And there is no practice and praxis with that. And that's what Black Hammer, like, we're here to put everything into practice. You know, we understand we have to overturn our material reality, versus like these other organizations like PSL who come out like, you know, only to like go to protest and exploit colonized peoples.
Lord.
For what? To advocate for reform within a settler colonial structure built on our genocide?
Exactly. And also PSL, the Party of Sexual Assault and Lies, you are still organizing with them? Why? When multiple abusers have come out, literal like our word have come out of that organization. Groomers have come out of that organization. Like, look at the people that are in that org. Like, you know, that's why in Black Hammer, we abusers out of here. Like, you don't exist in this organization. Like, wall for you. Like, and the fact that they would still like allow people like that to build and organize with them speaks a lot about how they're moving. You know what I'm saying? How do you want to first of all, you want to reform something in an exploitative nation that was built on your genocide. Okay, that's not, first of all, unscientific as f, like doesn't even make any sense. But also, you're allowing like people to R-word other people in your org, doing nothing about it. You're allowing groomers in your org and doing nothing about it. Like abusers in your org and doing nothing about it. Disgusting. Disgusting. Not only do you not practice, build anything for colonized people, but you abuse them as well.
100%. Like, and they're not in the hood. They're not serving colonized peoples. They're not giving out PPE, groceries, supplies, right? Like all things that Black Hammer is doing, outreaches almost every day to go into the communities to serve the people, right? Like, you know, we show up like every day to let our people know like Black Hammer is doing this and that, right? And then also providing material solutions. PSL comes out every summer to go to a few protests, right? And get people to buy into this socialist party that only advocates for reform, right? It's a reformist movement. And white socialism is just fascism. It's just furthering colonialism, right? Because like all they're asking is more loot of the stolen resources and labor of colonized peoples, right? Like that's what higher minimum wage is. That's what healthcare is in a colonial system. It's all built off of the death and looting of colonized peoples, and that's what they ask for more of. Like get colonized peoples to buy into.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's just, again, it's the exploitative relationship that colonizers have to all colonized people. It's like, let me sell you this false dream and lure you into the sense of reality that is good. Yes, this is the solution. Like, materially, what are they building? Genuinely, like, what are you building? Like, somebody asked, I would like to know what Black Hammer built. Like, what haven't we built? Literally, we have 200 acres of land. We have gardens all over Turtle Island. farms in Africa. We're building reverse osmosis filters, passing over 500,000 pieces of PPE, like organizing every single weekend in our community. Like, what haven't we done? Genuinely, like, I'm still thinking.
Period. Honestly, could spend all day trashing like these other white led orgs, right? Like they're not providing material solutions to the people, you know. But we about to get into our last read that back, y'all. Leave y'all off on a good note and further understanding colonization and what colonialism really is, you know, and what it necessitates, like in waking up our people. So yeah, so of course, I'm going to start here. Of course, many Hawaiians do not see tourism as part of their colonization. Thus, tourism is viewed as providing jobs, not as a form of cultural prostitution. Even those who have some glimmer of critical consciousness do not generally agree that the tourist industry prostitutes Hawaiian culture. This is a measure of the depth of our mental oppression. We cannot understand our own cultural degradation because we are living it. As colonized people, we are colonized to the extent that we are unaware of our oppression. When awareness begins, then so too does decolonization. Judging by the growing resistance to new hotels, geothermal energy, and manganese nodal mining, which would supplement the tourist industry, and to increases in the sheer number of tourists, I would say that decolonization has begun. But we have many more stages to negotiate on our path to sovereignty. My brief excursion into the prostitution of Hawaiian culture has done no more than give an overview. Now that you have read A Native View, let me just leave this thought with you. If you are thinking of visiting my homeland, please do not. We do not want or need any more tourists, and we certainly do not like them. If you want to help our cause, pass this message on to your friends. So yes, like honestly, Honani Kaitras like just lets the people know like don't come exploit my land. Like, you know, y'all are just killing my people. Because that's what these colonizers who are participating in tourist colonialism are doing. But I just want to like explain and lay out. Like I just love how Konani like states like so much of us like we understand our material reality is one of poverty, that we're oppressed in some way, but like we don't understand exactly where it comes from, right? Like as colonized people, and she's laying out like Hawaii is built through this tourist colonial industry that exploits the culture in every way possible, that commodifies it, all for the gaze of white people who come and exploit the land and the people there. And so many Hawaiian natives just like don't see it necessarily as like this form of cultural domination and colonialism because that's what it is. And she's like, once you finally begin to awaken to it, like that's when this process of decolonization begins. And that's what we're still seeing within Hawaii, right? Is like the people are waking up and understanding the tourist industry is a colonial industry. It's built on maintaining this oppressed, almost slave labor class to provide for the colonizers that come and destroy their lands, their waterways, in every way possible.
Exactly.
So, and we understand like all of our problems come from colonialism, right? And that's what this is, like in every way possible. So I love it. I love this PE. What are your thoughts, Chiquita?
Yes, I really love this read that back that you selected. There's this one point, there's this like two sentences that were super like really stood out to me. As colonized people, we are colonized to the extent that we are unaware of our oppression. When awareness begins, then so too does decolonization. Punto, punto. Like that is literally it, and that really solidifies our fourth principle of unity, that the only true colonized proletariat, the only leaders of this revolution are going to be us, the colonized masses of the world. Because once we start to realize our oppression, we start to realize the brutal just abuse that has been inflicted onto us for the last 600 years. We're not going to take that laying down. No, like not in any capacity. We're going to do everything to be land defenders, water defenders, and defenders of all colonized life. Because like, why wouldn't we? You know what I'm saying? Like, exactly. Why wouldn't we? Like, so I just really love that. And I really love this read that back because it's like, just don't come. Like, I don't know what you think you're going to help. Just don't come. My my colonizer coworkers just planned a vacation in Hawaii. Shaking my head. They're probably buying Hawaiian outfits at this very moment. Fucking K-Pots. Ah!
It's
Oh my
so
god.
gross. Like, and like colonizers love to say, like, oh, the tourist industry is so good for the economy of the people. Like, no, what would be better is like if there wasn't this tourist colonial industry, if the people weren't in poverty, if there wasn't so many homeless and houseless natives, right, on the island, if there wasn't Asians who had peonage visited upon them and like who are still suffering colonial oppression on the island, like all of that, like that would be a lot better, but like that's not the reality, right? And K-Pax is cracking me up. Like,
Yes, K-Bats. I wanted to use that too. Funky K-Bats.
I
But
like
yeah,
to, oh, sorry.
sorry, I was just gonna say, and especially in the middle of a plague, like not only are you going to a land where indigenous people are telling you, stop coming. We do not want you to come. Do not come to our land. But you're also doing that in the middle of a plague. In the middle of a plague that has killed in the United States a little bit under like 1 million people. Okay, so a little over 900,000 people have died in the United States. And I even think that number is underreported because they're not counting all of our colonized people that died in the prison systems and literally in a reformed version of slavery. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not counting them. They're not counting us literally being genocided in these colonial prisons. It's just so disgusting. And also, yeah, I just want to highlight that, and also just the correlations I see between Hawaii and my indigenous land, like where like Tulum, people still going to Mexico and like, oh well, I'm vaccinated. Yeah, but the majority of colonized people in Mexico are not vaccinated. Plus, these colonial jabs do not work. Do not work. Do not work. Okay, they are based in experimental science that literally this is the first time they've ever made a jab in this way. You know what I'm saying? It's the first time they have ever made a jab saying it's the first time they've ever made a jab this way. To actually create an effective jab, you have to study this virus virus for 2 to 5 years. It was 2 to 7 years. Excuse me, 2 to 7 years. It's been a little under a year, and they're already making jabs under experimental science.
And they don't work. They do not work. Like, people are still getting sick and spreading COVID. And like, I had a friend literally end up in the hospital after getting the jab, like, and was literally on his deathbed because like they do not work. Like, and you're just like thinking that you can get a jab, and then go visit, our islands, our colonized communities, and just kill our people. It's so awful. And that's
Exactly.
why too, you gotta like, as Black Hammer, we're ruthless about waking people up to our material reality, right? Like letting you're either the colonized or the colonizer, right? Like, because you got to understand it and overturn this perfect reality. I love like when Louis Farrakhan like laid out too. It was like, you have to destroy and kill the mind of the colonizer, of the white man, right? Like, because like the skin can live on and everything else, but this mentality cannot, right? It's literally destroying our planet. You have to wake up colonized peoples too, so that they can resist and fight back and end it.
Exactly. Full unity with that. And also I want to highlight Chief Watakame, who is the chief of disaster relief. And they said the jabs do not even prevent transmission. So you're putting something that doesn't even work into your body. Like, I need people to internalize that the people who are taking the jabs are the research subjects. I love myself. I love my body. I'm not doing that. Like, I want to protect my health in every capacity. I'm not going to take an experimental jab because a colonial system wants me to go back to work. No, absolutely not. Yeah, I just really wanted to highlight that. And also the fact that they manipulated the science in their studies. It's not even close to being as effective as a KN95 mask. That is 95% effective. You know what I'm saying? Like, in addition to taking proper COVID safety protocols, like the manipulated science isn't even hit over 90. You know what I'm saying? It barely hits 80%. Like, oh my Lord.
Exactly. And there was like this funny tweet I saw. It was like, like, oh, I've done the research, and it was like, no, baby, you are the research. Like, that's what you are. Like, you are the guinea pig. Like, sorry to lay it out, but
Exactly. Yes. So we can move on to the announcements. can move on to these announcements after we, are done dragging this like disgusting colonial jab. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yep. So yes, we have our reparations course, our reparations classes. It's an 8-week boot camp for colonizers, right, to get on the right side of history and fall under the leadership of colonized peoples. And we give you the history and political education so that you understand this colonial world in which you benefit from, right? Because like obviously only white people can benefit from white power and settler colonialism. And so, yeah, sign up today at blackhammer.org/reparations. We have comrades from the reparations core, class and everything. So, they really be doing it, falling under our leadership.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to all the Reparation Corps recruits in the comments that pay their reparations on this fine Sunday morning. So good,
Yeah.
keep that coming,
Better than your Western colonial church.
Exactly. Ooh, exactly. Yes. Alrighty, so today we have Forging the Hammer at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is mandatory for all hammers because this is going to be super, super, super important. We will be talking about individualism, which is a form of liberalism, and how that really plagues our colonized people, but also is really detrimental to the community, to the revolution, to our ultimate liberation. And we want to squash that out. And because we recognize that is colonized behavior, and we're not colonizers, we're colonized people. Okay, we actually have some humanity. So we're gonna, so that'll be starting soon. That is today, everybody. So do not forget. So Forging the Hammer today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, and go off, sis, our season finale with Comrade Dio and Chief of Faney. So yeah, that happens on Facebook Live, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, this Friday, May 21st. So put it on your calendar and show up. It's so entertaining. It's to uplift, obviously, colonized women, femmes, and non-men. And we recently had Chief Itza as a special guest, talking about their gardens and all the beautiful veggies that we're gonna see in Hammer City. So yeah, show up. It's such a good time, and they're honestly such a whole vibe. Like I love them so much because they just really be laying out the political line, but like in such a fun way, in such an uplifting way. So yeah.
Yes, full unity with that. I had so much fun. Shout out to Chief Dio and Chief Faney for having me on. Yes, and we have the Mad Mother ship. So all aboard on the Mad Mother ship. So it is going to be Friday, May 28th at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with original BHO tracks and dance. I'm excited. I remember the last Mad Mother ship. I think it was on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. I don't remember. It was so fun. I was like, shaking my little booty, taking my to all the amazing BHO tracks. It's just such a fun time. We get to talk to the comrades and also just enjoy ourselves. Because we do work very hard for our liberation. We are dedicated. It's a 24-hour thing. Like we're working. So it's come decompress with us and come hang out with us. So, yeah.
And yes, we have our curriculum department. Come join our curriculum department in which we're producing anti-colonial education for, the colonized peoples and children, right? Like in which we have our freedom school that we're working to build to provide an anti-colonial education and actually the real understanding of the world to colonized peoples, not this colonial education that you get in these ghetto rundown colonizer schools, right? Like, no, like we're laying it out for our people. So yeah, if you're an educator, if you're a teacher, you want to get away from the colony, you want to get away from like having to tell your like children in your classes this false colonial history, this colonial science, like come join our curriculum department, come join Black Hammer. And so you can email bhcurriculum@protonmail.com and join our curriculum department today.
Yes, shout out to the clerk. Salute to the curriculum department making PE so accessible. Like I really love it, and they just salute, revolutionary salute to everybody in curriculum. So we will be reading the final installment of our final installment of From a Native Daughter by Hawani K. Trass, which is about colonialism and sovereignty in Hawaii. And next week we'll be reading parts 4 and the appendix. It is the last episode, you guys. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to leave you guys. Oh. But it's gonna be so exciting. I want everybody to come with their read that backs. Let's really let's close this amazing conversation out with a bang. But yeah, it was very exciting, y'all.
Yes, I'm so excited to further this conversation in our last episode and to just close it out, you know. We're gonna close it out on a good note and lay it all out for you. So come
Yes.
next week, show up.
Yes, full unity with that. And also, just a final thing, if you wanted to learn more about Black Hammer, visit our website at blackhammer.org. You can see all our photos, all our educational resources, really see everything that you want to learn about Black Hammer. And you can come to our open member rally. It's open to everybody, all colonized people. It is on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you want to learn more, come check us out through that. But yeah, and we will close it out with a beautiful lamb back. Lamb back.
And back.